President-elect Donald Trump celebrated the new year at his Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida. But before the festivities kicked off, he took a minute to weigh in on cybersecurity in the wake of the Russian hacking allegations.
If you have something really important, write it out and have it delivered by courier, the old-fashioned way. Because I'll tell you what, no computer is safe. I don't care what they say, no computer is safe. I have a boy who's 10 years old. He can do anything with a computer. If you want something to really go without detection, write it out and have it sent by courier.
I want to bring in Carrie Lucas, Managing Director of the Independent Women's Forum and a Forbes columnist. Also, Jonathan Alter, MSNBC political analyst and Daily Beast columnist, and author of The Center Holds Obama and His Enemies. Happy New Year to both of you as we talk about this. Carrie, let's get started. You have the next president of the United States telling us, as we just heard, no computer is safe, that his 10-year-old could basically hack into any computer. How realistic is that for all of us to go currying around our information?
Well, it may not be realistic for all of us, but certainly the federal government ought to be thinking about how to protect its secrets. I mean, we've had so much attention in the last few weeks on cybersecurity, but this is not a new problem. The General Accounting Office has been warning the federal government and businesses about the increase in cyber warfare, not just from Russia, but particularly from China, and has been urging the federal government and corporations to take precautions. So, I think we need to look at hardening our defenses, both on the federal level, but then also businesses need to be paying attention. So we're never going to get rid of computers, but we need to be thinking about how better to protect this information.
Jonathan, so what's your take on him saying, yeah, there's one thing to take better precautions when it comes to businesses and our government, but Donald Trump to say, oh, no, computers aren't safe. My son could hack into it, start currying your sensitive information.
Well, I mean, the idea that we're all going to go back to snail mail and paper is not realistic, but we will make greater efforts to beef up security. I do think that this is another example of Trump showing that he knows how to change the subject, often brilliantly, from what is a very big story, arguably the biggest scandal involving an election since Watergate, where we had a foreign power compromising an American election. And for people who think that's overblown, I would just ask, Republicans who might be watching, imagine if the shoe was on the other foot and if we had evidence that Russian agents had broken in to Republican Party headquarters and the Trump campaign and stolen documents from those headquarters and otherwise tried to play mischief with the Republican Party. Would they be upset? You might imagine that they would be. Well, so for them not to be upset, not to be particularly concerned, want to move on, to quote Donald Trump, from this situation because it applies to Democrats, doesn't show a lot of...
But he's saying, Carrie, I want to bring you in this. He's saying he's got this information. I know this information. You don't know this information, but come Tuesday or Wednesday, you're going to hear about it. I'm going to tell you about it. Does it seem odd that he's promising that meeting, after that meeting with intelligence officials, that this information... Sure, what is this information?
Well, I mean, nobody knows, and we'll see what he has to say. But I think when we have this conversation, we need to be careful because absolutely it's a big story if the Russians were involved in releasing the DNC emails.
Yes.
But we need to not, but we can't make it sound as though, I think some of the rhetoric you just used made it sound as though the Russians were changing the vote totals, where nobody is alleging that. And absolutely, when we talk about security issues, one thing that everybody, whether it's the DNC, the RNC, all of us at home, we should recognize that emails are not safe. And when John Podesta or when the DNC is talking about trying to prevent Bernie Sanders from winning the primary, that was a crazy thing to put in email. It was a crazy thing for them to be doing. The American people learned that information. If it was the Russians who did it, that's bad, and we need to make sure that we keep the Russians out of our elections and not hacking into the Democratic Party.
If there's a pivot with Donald Trump here when it comes to
I just got to jump in on this. If the Russians were involved, this is what Trump is trying to do. And that is to suggest that 17 or 18 U.S. intelligence agencies are wrong. Now, if you start with that presumption that it's if, it might be a fat guy on a bed, as Trump said in the debate. It could be the Chinese. This has been Trump's line, if it's the Russians. It's been established, as much as our system is capable of establishing anything, that it was the Russians. So to continue to say, if it was the Russians, introduce doubt, change to John Podesta's, not being sensible in what he puts in emails. It's just changing the subject from penetration of our election. Now, it didn't change the outcome. I'm not suggesting it changed the outcome, but it's very important, as John McCain and others are doing, to hold hearings to get to the bottom of this. And it's very disturbing that other Republicans, other than John McCain and Lindsey Graham, don't have the sense of principle to recognize that if the shoe were on the other foot, they would be screaming bloody murder about this.
All right, we'll leave it at that, because I want to get to this, too, since it's the first day of 2017. I want those predictions out there, because who knew that 2016 was going to be the year we saw? So, Kara, let's start with you. What do you see as far as the Democrats and Donald Trump and how we'll get started this year?
Well, I think it's going to be really an exciting first couple months of the year. We're going to see a lot of positive changes. It's going to be interesting. President Obama's, so much of his legacy has been through executive order, and we're going to see how much of that can change in the first year of this presidency, as the President Trump begins rolling back some of the executive orders that are relating to things like the Clean Power Plan, that are really expensive and holding up businesses. So I think we're going to see a lot of some of the red tape of government start to get rolled back.
Very quickly, Jonathan, 30 seconds. What do you think will be the defining issue?
Well, there's going to be a huge fight about Obamacare. We'll see whether the Republicans are able to cobble something together to replace it after they repeal it, right after January 20th. And then I think you're going to see Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump kind of taking a victory lap together as they work against ISIS and claim a lot of credit for degrading ISIS, even though Barack Obama has already done so.
Oh, a lot to watch in the coming days and the coming year to both of you. Thank you for being with me.
Thanks.